The original Extreme Championship Wrestling ran its final show on January 13th, 2001. A non-televised event in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, the show attracted 1,300 fans and was headlined by a hardcore match between Just Incredible and the Sandman. Though not officially advertised as the trailblazing group's swan song, there was a definite sense among the wrestlers and staff that this was the end of the road. ECW was well and truly in the red by this point and had been circling the drain for a while. No future shows were scheduled, mounting debt coupled with their inability to secure a new TV deal and the departure of most of their top stars meant that it could no longer conceivably continue. I'm Jack from Cultaholic.com and this is the story of WWECW. When head honcho Paul Heyman showed up to replace the recently departed Jerry Lawler on commentary on the March 5th episode of Raw, the death of ECW was no longer in doubt. 3 weeks later, WCW would be sold to the WWE, and the world went from having 3 major North American promotions to watch to just a single one. Vince McMahon had his monopoly, and soon enough, many of the remaining ECW stars signed on with his outfit for the ill-fated Invasion. As we all know, the ECW and WCW alliance lost that war too, and eventually, everyone officially became WWE superstars by the end of the year. Fans continued to chant those 3 letters as Rob Van Dam, Tommy Dreamer, and the Dudley Boys did their thing on the big stage. And also for a handful of independent companies as places like XPW, 3PW, and even early MLW tried to recapture the spirit of the much-loved outlaw organization. There was still an audience for ECW, something that WWE was well aware of when they purchased its trademark and tape library during protracted bankruptcy proceedings in 2003. So WWE had the footage, the names, and the likenesses, and all sorts of other intellectual property, and they had a bunch of guys and girls who performed for the original ECW under their contract. And so, what the hell do you do when you've got all that? Thankfully, at first, WWE did something exceptional with it, putting together a sensational documentary retrospective entitled The Rise and Fall of ECW, which was released in November of 2004. It was a no-holds-barred look at the promotion from its humble beginnings to unimaginable success and eventual collapse. The double-disc DVD set was well received by fans and critics alike and quickly became WWE's best-selling home video release, staying that way for a long time. Based on the enthusiastic recommendation of Rob Van Dam, plans were then hatched to stage a one-off ECW reunion show. Pulling together everyone who had worked for the Heyman-led promotion in the past, as well as reaching out to ECW mainstays for one-shot deals, WWE presented One Night Stand live from the Hammerstein Ballroom on June 12th, 2005. This was a snapshot of everything that fans loved about the original. One Night Stand had high-flying lucha libre, outstanding technical wrestling, wild brawling, and of course, over-the-top characters. And to top it all off, Eric Bischoff got beat up a lot as well, so that was nice. The fans ate it up. Seriously, you've never seen so many guys in their mid-30s with black t-shirts on and sporting suspect facial hair enjoy professional wrestling quite this much. The enthusiasm was truly infectious. And it wasn't just the 2,500 in the arena that night who were into it either, because the pay-per-view attracted 340,000 buys, a great number that was actually stronger than many of WWE's pay-per-views that year. I'm sure it helped Vince buy an 8th bathroom for his mansion or whatever anyway. Yes, it was pretty much a home run all round, if you ignore that incident where one wrestler got totally drunk and went into business for himself and attacked another wrestler who was completely unsuspecting, but we'll look past that for now. With the DVD, pay-per-view, and other ECW merchandise just printing money for WWE, it was clear that there was a market still there, and rumours began circulating not long after One Night Stand that WWE were considering bringing ECW back full-time as a third brand. The idea was that ECW would come back and sit alongside Raw and SmackDown, but WWE would keep the integrity of the original alive by scaling back the promotion, running smaller venues, and allowing the talent more creative freedom when it came to laying out matches and storylines. Though the discussions were reported about for months, the news wasn't confirmed until May of 2006. ECW was coming back under the WWE umbrella, and not only was it coming back, it was going to have its own live 1-hour show on the Sci Fi channel. So sorry, yeah, 1 second. So yeah, the Sci Fi channel, how does that work then? So were people who were tuning in for like, aliens and laser guns and everything stick around for the wrestling afterwards? Well, the Sci Fi channel was owned by NBC Universal, which also houses the USA Network, which as we know has a long and successful relationship with the WWE. Initially getting the green light for a 13-episode run through the summer of 2006, the show debuted on Tuesday, June 13th, coming in the same week as a WWE vs ECW special and the second One Night Stand pay-per-view. Second One one-night stands are usually a bad idea, and in the script it says, "Trust me on this," but I couldn't possibly comment on that. But the show was another success and gave fans hope for the impending reboot of the brand. Commercially, the debut episode was a huge success, generating the best ratings on cable for any show in the same time slot. Sci Fi execs were so happy with the numbers that they happily extended the order for the number of episodes. Artistically, however, it was a disaster. First of all, WWE stars like Edge and John Cena were all over the show. And those guys are obviously excellent, but come on, this was supposed to be something different. New acts like Exhibitionist Kelly Kelly or Creature of the Night Kevin Thorne kind of failed to impress. Remember, of course, we were still a couple of years away from the Twilight boom, and horny vampires weren't yet in fashion. The show was also main evented by a bit of a naff Extreme Battle Royal, and worst of all, a character called the Zombie made an appearance at the behest of the Sci Fi network, who wanted to throw a bone to their usual audience. Yeah, that'll get the ratings up, lads. A zombie in a wrestling show. It didn't really work. There were a couple of positives, such as RVD being presented with the old ECW title and Kurt Angle looking like an absolute killer by squashing Just Incredible, but overall, the response to the show was not good. Already, the cracks were starting to appear, and it was plainly obvious that this version of ECW would have WWE's greasy meddling fingerprints all over it. Which was fine, it was their TV show after all, but for fans of the original, it was a sobering wake-up call because they realized that this thing they had loved so much would be the same in name only. And behind the scenes, trouble was also brewing. Heyman clashed openly with WWE executives over the direction of the show, creating a tense backstage atmosphere. Elsewhere, RVD was suspended and forced to drop both the WWE and ECW titles in the same week, less than 1 month after winning them, after he and Sabu were pulled over and arrested for driving with drugs in their possession. That's more like it. That's the spirit of the original ECW. And also, Kurt Angle, one of the real acquisitions for this fledgling brand, left the company in a cloud of controversy just a couple of months in. And WWE continued to be as tone-deaf as you could imagine, booking their own guys like Thorne, Mike Knox, Hardcore Holly and Test as the true stars ahead of the ECW originals who were, let's face it, brought in to be little more than glorified jobbers. Some early positives included the debut and rise of CM Punk, the surprisingly strong push for the enigmatic Sabu, and the occasional debut match, but really, that was about it. Before long, WWE felt the need to import the likes of Batista, Booker T, and D-Generation X, and all of that stuff about protecting the integrity of the original ECW and building the company around a new group of stars turned out to be hollow promises. I know, I'm as shocked as you are. Things weren't great, but the show chugged along to its first brand-exclusive pay-per-view, December to Dismember. This would prove a turning point for the brand. Not in a good way, this show was a catastrophe. With only 2 matches advertised as they went on air, WWE cobbled together a card that was, to be blunt, a bit of an insult to the paying customer. It was house show caliber for the most part, and that's if I'm being generous. And the show's main event, an Extreme Elimination Chamber match, encapsulated everything that was wrong with the product at this time. Sabu, who had apparently been causing headaches backstage, was removed at the last minute and replaced with Hardcore Holly, and the match was won by Bobby Lashley, a less popular choice than Punk or Rob Van Dam. The upshot was that the show did 90,000 buys, the worst in history until the advent of the WWE Network. Oh, and Stevie Richards and Tommy Dreamer asked for their releases. Oh, and Paul Heyman as well was actually sent home after a huge blow-up with Vince McMahon. Yeah, things weren't going so well. Following December to Dismember, which turned out to be the one and only WWECW pay-per-view event, the show was built around Lashley, Test, guest stars from the other 2 brands, and an original versus new breed feud that was designed to get the likes of Elijah Burke, Matt Striker, and Marcus Corvon over. A year after the ECW brand's hopeful unveiling, RVD, Sandman, Sabu, and a lot of the other originals were gone. I mean, Vince McMahon had been ECW champion, and as for Bobby Lashley, he'd moved on to bigger and better things. Big Show, who'd been a little bit of a crucial part of the brand as well, was absolutely knackered and had left, and then of course, the Benoit tragedy had happened, knocking all of the momentum out of WWE in general. From that point forward, the show took on a new look and feel. The hardcore matches were toned down and then phased out, and the program was built around future stars like Punk, Burke, John Morrison, Kelly Kelly, and The Miz. It was clear that ECW was now clearly the lowest show on the totem pole, a place for prospects to go and learn and work with less pressure before the eventual call-up to Raw or SmackDown. Over the next couple of years, talents like Kofi Kingston, Sheamus, Evan Bourne, Jack Swagger, and Zack Ryder would get an opportunity to shine there, while established pros such as Christian, William Regal, Matt Hardy, Shelton Benjamin, and Mark Henry would be on hand to aid their development. It was far removed from what we had seen for those first few months in 2006, but the newer ECW was, in its own way, a bit of a success. Though ratings had dipped, they remained steady, and when it came to the tri-branded pay-per-views, ECW was always represented. But interest was undoubtedly waning, and on February 2nd, 2010, Vince McMahon announced that ECW was going to be cancelled, with its last show taking place 2 weeks from then to be replaced by a new, supposedly groundbreaking show. On the final episode of ECW on Sci Fi, Big Show and Miz retained their WWE tag titles over Goldust and Yoshitatsu, while Ezekiel Jackson, a WWE pet project if there ever was one, downed Christian to become the last ever ECW champion. Yeah, Ezekiel Jackson. And that was that. Like the original ECW, WWE's version of it had went out with a bit of a whimper, having initially started out as an alternative, but limping to a finish that had been a long time coming. WWECW was then replaced by NXT. No, not the red hot wrestling factory we've come to know and love today, but the game show version that teamed up rookies and pros and introduced us to the likes of Daniel Bryan, Wade Barrett, AJ Lee, and others. Table breaking had been replaced by barrel racing, thumbtacks and barbed wire had been replaced by obstacle courses, and kissing contests. Lovely. Ultimately, the decision to revive ECW as a third brand was something that on the surface did make sense. It was still popular, a lot of the principal elements were still around and willing to contribute, and with it, they could present a different type of product that served a niche. We also can't forget that TNA was gaining traction at this point in time, and WWE may have been feeling the heat a little. But it was mishandled from the start, and to be honest, WWE may as well have introduced a completely new third brand so as to avoid comparison to a promotion that had such a strong, almost cult-like following. It could never have lived up to something that grew so organically and was so influential during a much different time in the business. So what is the legacy of WWE's version of ECW? For me, it simply has to be the reaction that Rene Dupree got when making his ECW debut in Madison Square Garden on a September 2006 episode. Okay, no, I'm joking, it's obviously not that. The legacy of WWE's ECW is that it gave a start to some talents who would go on to be main event players in the business, while offering second chances for others who are perhaps on a downswing in their careers but were still able to contribute in a positive way. The relaunch of ECW also serves as a cautionary tale for anybody trying to recreate something that belonged to a specific place and time, and the intangibles of which cannot be offhandedly explained. WWE's ECW wasn't all bad, but they were maybe a little foolish to think they could take the concept and make it their own while matching, if not bettering, a product that was genuinely cutting edge and left a distinct mark in the industry. It's been almost 2 decades since the original Extreme Championship Wrestling closed its doors, and fans still chant EC-Dub to this day. None of them, let's be honest, are chanting it because they have fond memories of Gene Snitsky or Ricky Ortiz doing their thing on the third brand. Anyway, I'd better wrap this up because I've got a meeting with a money mark from Tennessee. Hope you all enjoy Smoky Mountain Wrestling 2K20, everybody. The relaunch is coming. What could possibly go wrong? See you in Knoxville. Bye!